I think it's going to be special, but we've got to give the fans a reason for it to be special. Those are the words of Leon Draisaitl going into tonight's Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final in Edmonton. That's where we go right now to bring in Ryan Rishaug and Pierre LeBrun. Guys, it's got to be a special night for the Edmonton Oilers, or this series is all but officially over. Let's start right with the most significant story, Sasha Barkov. He left the game last game in game number 2 right after that hit from Leon Draisaitl. Did not come back. Was he on the ice surface right behind you guys earlier today? What's he look like, and will he be on the ice surface tonight?
Yeah, it didn't look limited at all in practice. This looked like another day at the office for Sasha Barkov. So he is ready to go. Paul Maurice confirming that in his case. So they avoided the worst, which is good for the series, good for everyone that this story we can turn the page on. Leon Draisaitl, I did ask him this morning. You know,
he loved that question.
Well, I mean, I asked him.
Had to be asked.
You know, about whether he had watched the hit again on video and whether he was relieved he wasn't suspended. And he really doubled down on the fact that I am not a player who looks to hurt other players. That's not part of my game. It's not something I enjoy about the sport. He was pretty detailed in his answer, and we believe him. But the play was what it was, but Barkov is fine. We all turn the page.
And notable on Barkov, potentially a new winger for him, Evan Rodriguez, who, as we know, is just bursting onto the Stanley Cup final scene here with all the goals that he's been scoring. He will swap with Carter Verhaeghe, and they did have that formation at times in the last game. But alongside Sam Reinhart, Gino. So that's a bit of a new look top line for the Florida Panthers, who, of course, give up last change with the series shifting back here to Edmonton.
And, Gino, I'll just jump in quickly on that. And I think some of that, even though Paul Maurice didn't share that part of it, I think is because they don't have last line change here with the series shifting to Edmonton, that defensively maybe a different look in his top 6 because they may not be able to get the Barkov line always out against Connor McDavid. Although in reality, and Ryan and I have talked about this off air, you can tell that what truly matters to the Panthers when Connor McDavid's on the ice is that Gustav Forsling is on the ice defensively.
And lastly on this, Gino, with the last change thing, Chris Knoblauch was pretty clear today that, you know, he doesn't want to get his players out of rhythm. He talked about how if you're chasing a matchup, a whistle goes and now you're pulling McDavid off the ice because they put a certain player on the ice and you're throwing everything out of whack. To a degree, I think Chris Knoblauch truly believes, and I think the numbers back this up. If you look at the shot share from the first couple of games, he can play McDavid head-to-head against Barkov and get a positive result. Well, they haven't gone in yet. So it'll be interesting to see how much he chases 97 away from matchups tonight with last change. He indicated he probably won't do a ton of it.
Guys, I want to ask you about something that all three of us have experienced. When you go into a dressing room, talk to players after a game or just before the next game, and you notice a theme that the players are all using the same word, right away you think somebody in the room stood up and used this word because now everybody's repeating it. The word I heard over and over today was chaos. Vinny Darnay, for example, saying we have to go out there and create chaos. We saw a little chaos at the end of game number 2, 30 minutes in penalties handed out in the third period, most of it inside the last 2 minutes because of those 2 misconducts. Are we seeing the Edmonton Oilers coming to the realization they need to maybe potentially shift their style of play from a finesse game to more of a chaotic game in order to challenge Florida and then to turn the mode of this entire series around right now? What are your thoughts on that, guys?
Yeah, so I would say that the Oilers have the ability. They're a big team. They're a strong team, and they can play physically. So I think, excuse me, where Vinny Darnay is concerned, I mean, he can partake in that. The guy's 6'7", covers half the ice surface, and after the whistles can handle himself as well as anybody. So I think, yes, for Vinny Darnay, absolutely, you want to create that chaos. You want to be in the mix. You want to be, making life miserable for your opposition. The challenge for me with that, Gino, is the Oilers have a lot of players that don't necessarily function that way. So complete chaos between the whistles. If Ryan McLeod's out there, there are a few different players that's not necessarily that comfortable for them. I think the Oilers are good to absorb it. I think they can counterpunch a little bit. I don't know if physically dictating is in the cards for them, especially with Darnell Nurse and Evander Kane so up in the air in terms of their health, Pierre. I think the Oilers can handle it. I don't know that they're going to be the ones that go out and punch anybody in the mouth first.
Yeah, and maybe it's tied to what Gino was just asking, but really what I heard today is Leon Draisaitl come out and talk about the need to simplify their game as a team. And then Chris Knoblauch asked about that, gave a long, detailed answer about what that looks like for the Edmonton Oilers, which is chipping pucks in deep, making sure the puck's off along the wall. He said, you don't have to have a lot of talent to do the simple things in hockey. once you lay that foundation of simplifying your game, then your skill can take over. That clearly has been part of their meetings here the last couple of days entering this game.
What's the deal on Evander Kane? We know last game he was really, truly hobbled. Every time he went up the ice, we could tell when he was on the bench, he was still standing. He only played 10 minutes last game. Is he in the lineup tonight? What are you anticipating from him?
So Chris Knobloch is in full Stanley Cup final mode. Like, when Chris Knobloch first arrived as a media group, you never really know how a coach is going to handle his lineup information. So as a group, we started pushing him a little, like in the regular season. Chris, who's starting in net tonight? And he'd tell us. And we were like, oh, this guy's going to tell us. And then we would say, oh, ask about an injured player. He would tell us. And we're like, oh, this is great. He's going to tell us. He was like that even through the playoffs. Well, he hit a wall yesterday or today. I mean, even yesterday he shared that he thought Corey Perry was like today. I asked him, I said, what can you tell us about Darnell Nurse and Evander Kane's availability to play tonight? And is Corey Perry coming in? He goes, you're going to have to wait till tonight to find out. It was just like a canned response. Didn't give an inch, Gino. Like, so he's clearly in Stanley Cup final mode. But Pierre, I'll kind of let you give the updates. But we think that Kane is unlikely, Nurse likely.
Yeah, I think Nurse will play. And, of course, if he couldn't, you got Cody Ceci standing by. But in terms of Kane, credit the guy for trying to give it his all. He can't even sit on the bench. I would look down in the arena in games 1 and 2. I think you noticed this as well. He has a hard time sitting on the bench during the play. He's kind of standing near the board and trying to be in a comfortable position. Did
you see the video of him yesterday trying to take snapshots on the ice? I mean, just wincing in pain after all of them and kind of bending over. Like, Pierre, he's clearly not right.
And it's a tough thing, the idea that, you're tough and you want to play because it's the Stanley Cup final. You want to give it your all for your team. But then there's that fine line of, are you hurting your team? Yeah. If you can't perform. And to me, I think he's out tonight, but we'll see.
And Sam Carrick, by the way, looks like he's out. Skated for quite a while, got a good sweat on, so it looks like he's out. And I would expect Corey Perry to be drawing in.
All right. Special teams. Got to ask you about special teams. The Oilers have gone 34 straight penalty kills without giving up a goal. That streak ends in game number 2. Are there things that Florida's power play is providing more concerns for Edmonton's PK, or was it just a one-off?
I feel like, the dam's going to break at some point. The Oilers' penalty kill has been so good. The Panthers have a pretty deadly penalty kill, too. Like, Paul Maurice talked about the weapons that they have. They do a lot of work to try and stay ahead of the game. So, listen, penalty kills, they're not meant to be perfect. The standard is kind of in this bizarre territory with these two teams with how good they've been. They're going to get scored on. I think the Oilers' penalty kill will probably adjust here. What was interesting to me, Pierre, was Connor McDavid saying yesterday about the Oilers' power play, we need it to be a little more road hockey.
Yeah.
Right? A little more road hockey, a little less structured, I asked Aaron Ekblad today, is there a way for you to stay ahead of whatever changes the Oilers might make? And he goes, well, from what I hear, I think they're going to try and be a little less structured and play more road hockey style. So, that maybe gives us a little bit of a hint. I thought that was interesting. They're paying attention.
Yeah, and I'd love to be a fly in the wall in that power play video room with the Oilers because it's the most lethal power play in the NHL. But I was speaking to former Oilers coach Dave Tippett earlier in these playoffs, and he brought up the fact that Glenn Gulutzan is the one who coined the road hockey thing. Glenn Gulutzan coaches the Oilers power play, and he has been saying this internally to the Oilers stars for several years now that when our initial tactics break down, use your instincts. And that's when you see McDavid skating around in circles sometimes on a power play. That's not planned.
Yeah.
That's just them sort of free-flowing and saying, okay, the first thing we tried didn't work. Now I'm going to try and get the penalty killers off kilter here by skating around. And when you talk to other teams on the PK, they say it's almost impossible to pre-scout for when they start doing that. So be interesting if we see that.
The one thing I'll say about that road hockey analogy is in road hockey, when the older kid with the huge shot, when he winds up in road hockey, everybody just gets the heck out of the way. I think the Oilers need less of that. I do think the Oilers do have a bit of a habit on their power play. They flare out to the flanks a little bit. Draisaitl looking for the one-timer. They're always looking for that cross-seam stuff. It wouldn't surprise me, Gino, if when the big guy winds up, as uncomfortable as it is, we see some more Oilers sweaters heading towards the net instead of flaring away from it.
Listen, I played a lot of road hockey in net, and when the big guy was winding up, I was just getting out of the net. I didn't waste time.
You were the big guy. You were the big guy with the big shot, Gino.
The mask is still behind me with all the dents in it from taking pucks in the head from my own teammates in the warm-up. Listen, I got to ask you about Florida's travel concerns. I found this totally ironic because people talk about how great it is to play in Florida because the weather's there. That was not the case yesterday. and it really hurt the Panthers in making their way to Edmonton. Tell us that story, guys.
Well, I can tell you that every single player and head coach Paul Maurice completely downplayed their travel delays here today when we asked them about it.
Yeah, he didn't like that question from you either.
Well,
you were annoying everybody today.
I was not.
Hey, Leon, how about your hit?
Well,
hey, Paul, you guys screwed up your travel today. You were in everyone's grill today.
What can I say? I like asking questions, but basically, Matthew Tkachuk said, listen, guys, we were delayed 2 hours. We got to the hotel. We ate, we exercised, and I had a great sleep. Like, they really downplayed it. The question I asked Paul Maurice is I'm curious about the process of making that decision. Why wouldn't you fly the same day as the Oilers? Why are you delaying your flight to the second day? And he didn't give a complete answer, but what he said is we have people that look at this for us. And I think it goes to sleeping patterns and what makes sense. And the other big thing is this game remains an 8:20 Eastern puck drop, even though we're in Edmonton, Alberta. So I think they looked at that too, saying there is no real adjustment in terms of the time
We were
zone.
in there digging away, Gino, trying to get a sense for whether this mattered or not. This is the extent of our investigative journalism today, and this is what happened. Gustav Forsling was like, yeah, we played a couple extra games of cards. Matthew Tkachuk was like, yeah, we got great chefs. We had some good food. And Paul Maurice was like, what happened yesterday is the coaching staff got 12 pounds heavier because we ate about 9 meals. But he goes, it was 2 hours. Like, it was 2 hours, and it's not a big deal. So, maybe if the Panthers look exhausted in the first period tonight.
I was going to say.
They've got the plain legs still. I'm sure Pierre will be all over that post game, too.
I mean, the other thing, too, to consider is that this is one of the greatest atmospheres in the NHL.
Everyone's going to be energized.
I mean, Edmonton's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's going to be pumped after the anthem. But the Panthers just went through Boston and New York, 2 original 6 barns, electric atmospheres in New York and Boston, and they look at ease in those buildings. So I think they're built for this.
Compared to Florida, too. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to sound like the homer here because I'm from this town. That building was Deadsville compared to what the Panthers are going to experience here tonight. So I would expect everybody to be pretty fired up and energized.
I will say this. I was in that building in the Cup Final in 06, and I've never experienced a crowd like that.
Yeah.
That loud for that long.
That was nuts.
It was an unbelievable experience. Another little note of positivity for Oiler fans. 11 of the last 14 teams that have fallen behind 0-2 in the Stanley Cup Final have come back to win Game 3. So, a little positive there. Ryan Rishaug,
How many won the
Pierre
cup?
LeBrun. I'm going to leave it at that. Because the ultimate number in winning the series was somewhere, well,
it's probably not great.
Let's leave that until after tonight's game. Thanks, guys.